Jags are my jam. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
So it is just me this week. Neil is up to his eyes in it and he needs a week off. As usual, he's doing 6+ days a week and behind schedule. So rather than cancel, we thought we'd go ahead anyway with just me. And I'm going to try my best. But Neil has given me this button to press if I'm really struggling. I don't know what it'll do, but we're going to push on without hitting the button unless I absolutely have to. Oh, hello. Chris.
What the hell? How'd I get here?
Emergency button. You must be emergency Chris.
What? All right, go on then. Let's do it.
Radio return.
Good Jag games at last. Maybe.
And I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
All this and more coming up on this week's show.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Don't choke on your dinner, Chris.
Sorry, Dave. You caught me in the middle of dinner, funnily enough.
It is fantastic. It is fantastic to see you again. Fantastic for you to get back on. The top submission this week, just by chance, happened to be Apprehensive Proof 274 saying, bring Chris back for a week as a guest presenter.
Oh,
so how well timed that? And it's the top
perfect.
one. Everyone else wanted you back, Chris. So I do note he did say
I didn't upvote it.
Did you?
No, I didn't.
Welcome back. How have you been? How long has it been? It's been like 4 months, maybe?
It's been 7 years, I think.
7 years?
Yeah, 7 years. Yeah.
Has it been 7 years of feast or 7 years of famine for you?
Just 7 years. No, it hasn't. Obviously, feels like it's been forever, but it's not really, has it? When was it? It was the start of this year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So far out. Yeah, it feels like it's been a year, but it clearly hasn't. But no, yeah, been okay getting the headspace that I intended to get, which is good. And I'm glad I did because it's a very busy year, very odd year. It's almost, I don't know what it's like for you, but it's almost as if everybody's suddenly woken up after the global events that went before and things, all the gears of everything are slowly turning over again, which is good. But I've also done exactly what I intended to do with my free time, which is just play games. You know, that whole play more in 24 thing inspired by the Retro Bear. Been doing lots of that. That's the main thing I've been getting into. We just had, in fact, this last weekend, just gone, the Perth Amiga User Group Gaming Day. But I got to play somebody at Falcon, a guy called Al, Falcon 1-on-1 via RS232 link up. 4 kills to 1. I'm pretty sure it was Al. Pretty sure that was the score to me. Stunt Car Racer, link up, got to have a go at that. I think that was 4-0 against Al as well. But one of the other admins, Matt, just completely very aggressive driver. His whole tactic was just to drive through his opposition rather than round them. Just completely destroy their car, then continue on with the race. And something I'd never done before. One of my favourite games, Lotus 2. But link up 4-player. Never done link up 4-player before, so that was good fun as well. And I was constantly winning that. Not bad for somebody that doesn't play games.
Could you try and look less smug? Neil setting up in the cave with an ST and an Amiga playing 4-player Lotus. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
You sound as if you've been using the time well. I know what you mean about waking up, but I've been thinking about myself doing it rather than other people. As I've said before, I have health issues, but they are lifting a fair bit now, and I'm getting more things done. So yeah, I feel as if I'm waking up after being sleeping from. It was a long time ago, though. That event was a long time ago now. But
it was.
Things are finally starting to do it. You're coming over to UK, I think.
Yes, that's right. I'm very much looking forward to coming over to Kickstart. In fact, I will be attending Kickstart. I could have got cheaper flights because we were going to come slightly later, but I was like, I don't know when I'm going to be over again after this. So I thought, do it once, do it right. I want to go to Kickstart, so stuff it, pay the extra airfare, and I'll be there with my wife, Nikki. She'll be coming along as well. So if there are other wives in attendance, I'm sure there's going to be an Amiga Wives Club in the corner of a bar somewhere where they just talk to each other about whatever they can find in common whilst the rest of us have a blast. I'm going to the after party as well, so can't wait. Yeah,
I think these things pass so quickly that no one could get bored at it. Before you know it, it's over, and it's like, oh, I wanted to do so many things, and you'll spend most of the day talking to people, I think.
Yeah, true.
But
although you say that, would I go to one of Nikki's craft camps? No. So, it's very good of her to tag along. It is. It's very good of her to tag along.
Camp sounds more of a commitment than a kickstart day.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Well, you'll enjoy it. It's a shame. I won't be there. I won't be there, I'm afraid. I did want to try and get time off work, but I wasn't able to. I'm trying to buy a shed just now and a catio.
What's a catio?
Well, I've got decking out the back, and I want to get someone to put a structure on it and a roof so that I can sit out there and have a cup of tea in the rain as well, but also mesh so that the cats can get out there.
So we call that a cat run. Yeah.
A cat run. Well,
yeah.
To convert my decking into a cat run, but also because when I open the doors there, the cats can get out. So it means for me to open the doors to my decking, I need to get both cats and herd them both into a room and close the door, which they don't like, just for me to walk out there and have a cup of tea. So guess what? I don't walk out there and have a cup of tea. Yeah. So if I get this done, I'll be able to do that. Open the doors, have a cup of tea, or even when I'm working, leave the doors open, have the cats go out there and play about. So that's what I want to do. And it sounds a wee bit daft when I explain it, but I think it makes sense afterwards. Yep. I also cut a massive hole through the wall a couple of days ago. 150 millimeter wide hole, which to me seemed absolutely wild doing it, but no, just a drill bit cut through to try and get air conditioning put in because we're having a massive heat wave here. I told you how hot it was, and you laughed at me.
I did. I laughed at my brother as well, who's also in Glasgow. Go on, you explain your side.
It got to 23 degrees here. The problem is our houses are designed to gather and accumulate heat, so it gets uncomfortable.
I know. I do know where you're coming from, but yeah, my brother has said exactly the same thing the same day you said it to me, and what I said to my brother, same thing I said to you. He said, "Oh yeah, it's getting really hot over here. It got up to 25," and I said, "Oh yeah, it's really cooling down over here. It got down to 25." And I wasn't even joking. We had the exact same temperature on the same day. He was finding it hot. I was finding it cold. So, oh well, it's relative. It's from what you've come from, right? So, yeah. I'm just going to put the fire on, Dave.
What's that behind you on your right-hand side?
There.
Oh,
there.
Sorry.
There, right-hand side, yeah. PS2. Picked that up from a local tip. So, refuse centre, e-waste collection, whatever you want to call them, recycling centre. And it was covered in dirt and everything. I powered it on there. They let me plug it in and power it on, but that's all I could do. And I took a punt, so about £15 it cost me. I didn't do anything to it. I just plugged it in once I got home, and it works.
Trash to treasure, eh? Trash to treasure.
Absolutely fine. So all I've done is wipe it with a alcohol wipe, and there's my restoration, mate. It's done.
Stick it on eBay as refurbished.
Yeah.
Shall we get into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
I sit alone and watch your light, my only friend through teenage nights, and everything I had to know, I heard it on my radio. Chris, did you ever use the radio with your Spectrum?
No, that would be a stupid idea. And I didn't do it with my Electron either, which is odd given how many awesome games are available for it, and it's everyone's favourite system, and it's not at all uncool. Yeah.
You're referencing the comments where people did say it was uncool.
Quite possibly.
Well, it turns out that radio was a thing, and it's happening again in Slovenia. And the Computing History Museum in Ljubljana, which I hope I pronounced correctly, is making it happen. It's an interesting enough place in itself because of its location. I don't mean that you get to see the lovely area it's in, the Dragon Bridge and the castle and St. Nicholas Cathedral. No, I mean that Slovenia was part of Yugoslavia, and it had a very different computing history than we're used to in Western Europe, Americas and down under, etc. And as a result, if you visit there, you'll get to see Slovenian computers like the Triglav, which is quite interesting because it has several different configurations which are quite different. They've been around since 2004, which is long before all this retro stuff really took off and got cool. But from what I read, it's got roots that go further back than that as well. So it's quite an establishment there. But going back to today's submission from Due Communication 855, we're talking about the ZX Spectrum, the ubiquitous 8-bit micro that was made in Scotland and was by far the most popular of its time in the UK. It didn't spread its wings too far. It generally was mostly focused in the UK. It did go abroad, of course. America did Timex and so on, but nothing like as popular in the UK elsewhere. So I'm a bit surprised to hear it was broadcast in Slovenia. It's quite simple, though, the radio idea. At a certain time on Radio Student, which is 89.3 FM, you'd start recording what you heard on the radio onto a cassette tape. The data would be broadcast, and then you'd then connect your Spectrum to it and play it back just like you were loading any other tape game. It's been done before. According to Ars Technica, it's the 40th anniversary of Contraband 2. So this is the game that they were broadcasting, which was originally published by Radio Student, and that's a radio channel, both in physical copies and similar over-the-air fashion. The game is in Serbian, as it was originally made for what was then Yugoslavia, for ZX Spectrums mostly smuggled in from Western Europe. And that kind of made sense to me then, because if you're going to smuggle in a computer into communist Yugoslavia, I'm guessing you'll want it to cost as little as possible. Of course, the cheapest thing to get your hands on was the humble Spectrum. Smuggling was something that lots of Yugoslavs did in a somewhat casual fashion, and it inspired Contraband and its sequel, text adventure games with some graphics. So this did happen in the UK. You did get radio broadcasts in the UK. Audio for Spectrums was apparently broadcast outside of normal TV times, and just like this, you could record it and put it onto your Spectrum. I never heard of it happening for the Amstrad. Maybe it happened for the BBC Micro. I don't know. I'm not sure which micros it did happen for, but I'm wondering if budget tapes, being able to go and pick up a tape for £1.99, maybe put an end to that. I'm not sure. But something we do miss from the 80s and 90s is the shared experience. When there's only a few channels and there's less games, etc. going on, we can all participate in something together. And I'm imagining an alternative history where the BBC felt that they should make a new game every month or so and release it for all the popular home micros and broadcast it outside normal broadcast times on TV or on the radio, so that we would all have Maze game, which might be a text adventure, for example, this month, or next month it's a platformer where we all play the same game. That would be pretty cool. What do you think, Chris?
That would be cool. It's a really cool concept, and I can't believe I missed it when it was happening, when they were broadcasting them. I certainly never came across it, and it wasn't something that ever came up in playground conversation. But what I do remember is when I've heard about it in retrospect, just thinking about how much static we usually got on the radios in our house. It was never a crystal clear signal for us, regardless of whatever, boombox or hi-fi I was listening to. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, it's a good point, because you would only need one glitch in that whole thing, and the whole thing was done.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they broadcast it like 3 times in a row, and you would record it and try that and just keep playing it through until it worked. I don't know.
So I can't believe it worked. So I'd be interested to know if anybody ever did do that. Maybe somebody can comment or whatever. But every time I think about it, I think, but did it actually work? Nice concept, but did it work? Because,
I wonder if the Spectrum owners who are older than us, people who were, rather than a kind of 8 or 10 years old when they first got it, if they were 15 or 16 when they got the Spectrum in the early 80s, they would be the people who would be into everything going on like that. So maybe they would know. I know there's a few listening to the show, so maybe we'll find out.
No, it'd be good. What about should this week in retro, right? So podcast modern version of a radio station, right? Really? So this week in retro, you could maybe work with one of the Spectrum developers like Zosia or Bitmapsoft or any other developer, really, and release a Spectrum game as part of the podcast, but not downloadable off the Reddit. Mm-hmm. Do the audio in the podcast, and then you could release a game that way. That would be cool. What about that Invaders game with our faces on it? You could do it. That
would be ideal. I think if we do it, we shouldn't make it too easy. We shouldn't make it that easy to do. It needs to be a little bit of effort to go through to get it to work.
Yeah, add some static.
Yeah. No. I don't mean that. I just mean at the end of the episode, we'll say, and here's a Spectrum game for you to play, and just leave it at that. I know that Hoffman did it with his Amiga game. He put a Spectrum game in the Amiga game that you could connect to your Spectrum and load from the Amiga.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That's coming out soon, I think. I've bought the big box version of Seconoid. That's coming out soon, I think. So, yeah. I've included a link in the show notes to play the game on the Internet Archive. However, that does assume that you can read Serbian. So I'm not sure if all of us will be able to play that. And of course, there's no way to translate it very easily because it's just text on a screen on a Spectrum emulator. But there you go. It's there for you if you want. We are sponsored by Circuits on a PCB Maker, PCBWay. PCBWay are a manufacturer of many different things, not just printed circuit boards. They can also do assembly for you. They can build the entire thing. They can put on some of the components. They'll do CNC milling. They'll do 3D printing. And of course, Neil's just been showing off the printed PC-20, the Commodore one he's been doing, which was made by them, and he's now got mounted on the wall. So thank you very much for PCBWay.com for sponsoring us and for inspiring Chris to interpret his dinner as a printed circuit board.
It was cold. Back in 1993, I happily scoffed at the prospect of a hi-fi manufacturer deciding to make a games console called the PlayStation, something I'm sure most of you have never heard of. And instead, I did the sensible thing. I backed the safe horse, Atari, because I'd always wanted an Atari, except when I owned an Amiga, of course. Atari, I saw as the genesis of gaming, really, especially in the home. And they were set to release the mighty Jaguar. And they'd even done the math, Dave, and marketed it as a 64-bit console in an era when most were trying to jump from 16 to 32 bits. What could possibly go wrong? Well, nothing at all, except for a total lack of developer support, bodged marketing, questionable claims, an ultimate flop, and with only 50 games in the official library making it to market. That's what could go wrong. It's not all bad, though. The good, let's start with the good. On release, it was the cheapest way to play a good port of Doom, and I'll die on that hill. That's one of the main reasons I bought one. And Alien vs. Predator, at the time, passed for a very good game, rather than a very cleverly reskinned Wolf 3D clone, which when you look below the surface is kind of what it is, but I still love it. And people also went crazy over the fact that it could play an Atari classic, Tempest, which was from 1981. But
it's great. I played that in the cave, played Tempest in the cave with a spinner, and it's such a good game.
That would be good. And that's why it works so well on the Jaguar, because of the it didn't have a spinner. Anyway, the bad, other than that...
You've learned a lot of sarcasm while you've been away.
Just a little bit. So... Basically, this was 1993. It had the Motorola 68000 at its core, which was aging, and because of that, it suffered from ports of games from the Amiga and the ST. I mean, they were great in their own right for those platforms, but we didn't want to just play the same games again on another system. And there were often pretty much, no noticeable enhancements to the game as well. There's probably the ease of porting because of the 68,000 in the center that made it financially sensible for the developers to go that route. But it didn't give us as consumers very much incentive to go out and buy a brand new console, Dave.
Yeah, the ease of porting thing it's a double-edged sword because the Amiga got most of its games early on from easy ports from the ST. And you can argue, yeah, those games weren't great because of it, but they may not have got the games at all. And if you look at the Amstrad CPC, it got games which were easy ports of the Spectrum. And again, would the Amstrad CPC have got half of its games at the start, or maybe even three-quarters without the easy port? The problem with the Jaguar is it was getting easy ports of games from systems that were really on their last legs.
Yeah, that's true. I can't think of a single Amiga port on the PlayStation, for example. There probably is one.
No.
Somebody will correct me, but it certainly doesn't stand out, right? They were all original titles. It was all new and fresh and cutting edge, right? So, but it's not all lost for the Jaguar. In recent times, as with other platforms, there's modern indie developers out there that delight in pushing the limits of, now 30-year-old hardware. And making the most out of the architecture. And in the case of the Jaguar, those custom chips, Tom and Jerry. So Reese from Control, Reese, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with, he's a big Atari fanboy, slightly bigger than Dave even. And he's involved in a 2024 Atari game dev competition called JagJam. So it's a competition for modern Jaguar developers to step up and make games for the Atari Jaguar, show off what it's capable of, and potentially have their game published as a reward for their efforts. More about the comp in a moment, but Dave, you love Atari and Jaguar cars. What are your thoughts on the Jag and modern games development for it?
It's a funny thing that we're talking about the Jag, because that's partly why Neil isn't here. Mine is in getting its service and its MOT today, so I couldn't record at the normal time, and that was bumping Neil out.
Is your Jag in a jam?
No.
That was terrible.
As far as I know, it's fine. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
As far as I know, it's all right. They haven't phoned me yet to say it needs this. The phone always rings in the service and the MOT, and you think, oh no. But no, it's fine. But we ended up bumping Neil out, and I couldn't record until later, and Neil's already behind, so we couldn't go into the cave a couple of hours late. So we ended up with an emergency. Chris, to the Jaguar is the reason why you're here today. The Jag, as everyone knows, was underused. Tom and Jerry, and that's Tom with the 64-bit blitter, I should point out, could do so much and they didn't get to use it. I'm told it was difficult for programmers to get their head around using these chips, which I'm not an expert, but I know that some arcade games had this kind of concept going on where most of their grunt was in the co-processing chips like this, not in the main CPU. And if I think of a home computer that worked quite similar to that, in other words, it had a reasonably powerful CPU, but it had very powerful co-processors. Of course, the Amiga. If you use the Amiga to its full potential, you'd be using all that stuff as well as the 68,000. The Jaguar just took it a lot further. So the Jaguar didn't get the development that it should have done, but there is a development platform out here, and it's suggested in Reese's video that you use that, and I'm wondering if that helps. Surely it must. But I'm also wondering, Chris, and maybe this is a question for you, what the Jag is best suited for. Is it Doom-like 3D or pseudo 3D and pseudo? I mean, what's the point in that distinction there? If it looks 3D, it's 3D. Is a Jaguar better for those type of games, or is that just because those games were all the rage when the Jaguar came out? Clearly, you wouldn't want a text adventure on the Jaguar. Imagine that with a JagPad. A point and click would be nice, but wouldn't push the Jaguar. So I want to see it pushed to do something interesting and innovative, and not just ports of existing things or clones of existing things, which I'm glad to see is in the rules for this game jam. But Chris, what's the Jaguar ideal for?
That's a very good question, actually. I mean, when I originally bought it, I bought it off the strength of that it could do, pseudo 3D in terms of, Doom, AVP, Wolfenstein 3D. Obviously, there was a very nice port of that, but that was an old game by that point. That's certainly what I bought it for. I also bought it in the hope that it could maybe do some, competent flight sims. Keeping in mind, I come from the Amiga level of flight sim, so it could certainly do fast flat shade poly. But, the game it shipped with, Cybermorph, kind of then made me think the other way and think maybe it's not meant for this because it had such a short draw distance, wasn't that impressive. I did like the pad. I know that's controversial, but I did like the controller pad and all those buttons. Again, because when you're doing a flight sim, there's so many controls that you need to have. A one-button joystick's not going to cut it. Even a 6-button SNES pad isn't going to cut it. You need, a few extra buttons. So I like the pad for that reason. But what it certainly wasn't, good for, well, it was good for it, unfortunately, which was the rock for its back was, platformers and vertical scrolling. There's vertical scrolling shooters. There's nothing wrong with still doing that. But if you're going to do that, push the limits, do something new. But whereas, again, we're going full circle, what we got was, Zool 2. It's an Amiga game, and it's just a site. There's nothing impressive about that, so it's not pulling on the strength. I think its strength was potentially in 3D, which, funnily enough, I was looking at some footage whilst researching this story, and one of the standout games I came across was, and I'd never heard of it until today, a game called Skyhammer. From my research, I think the game was actually cancelled, which is a shame because it looks absolutely stunning. It's almost like a Descent clone. That's how I would explain what I was seeing in the videos I was looking at, sort of a first-person flying shooter. But the texture maps were fantastic, and it seemed to have a nice, smooth frame rate. I think it was cancelled in 1996, and then it was eventually released in 1999 or 2000 when Jaguar development went open source. I think that's the history of it, but what a shame. I mean, that's part of the, the story of the Jaguar's failure. You could have had these standout games like something like Skyhammer, but we just didn't get them. I think Iron Soldier is probably the most impressive game I've played in my collection. That's not bad. What excites me about modern development is often when people make these new games for an old platform like that, because of the multi-carts and stuff like that, you can get the new games for free. Some people release them for free, which is fantastic. And even if they do release them as a boxed hard copy, because the original Jaguar games, even though they're not necessarily that good, if they're boxed, the price has gone ballistic. They're quite hard to collect for now. And so often you can get a brand new game that's better than anything in the original catalogue, and you get it cheaper than an original. So I think that's a fantastic reason for modern development, or not just the Jag, but all systems like the Amiga, Spectrum, everything. And in fact, I came across so John Hancock Retro on YouTube. He does a lot of Atari stuff, and he certainly seems to cover a lot of new Jaguar releases. So that's probably a good place to go and research what other people are doing, I think. But look, if I'm going to be honest, I've not had much time to look at the new games for the Jag, but the ones that I have looked at, and this isn't to rain on anybody's parade, kudos for developing anything, because I can't, right? So well done for making a new game. But a lot of them still look like 16-bit games on a 32/64-bit platform. Does that make sense? They're still leaning,
I get what you mean.
leaning into the platformers and that kind of thing.
I get why you're being cautious here, because we mustn't knock people doing this.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I just want to see it. I really want to see it pushed to the limit. Let's answer that question. What's it good at? And something like JagJam could really encourage people to do that. Yeah.
We see lots of development for 8-bit systems, and we see a good bit less for 16-bit systems, and we see even less again when it comes to kind of 32-bit systems or 64-bit, which this definitely is. For there, so it's because it's much harder to develop. There's much more to do. So I get why we don't see the exponential levels of effort to produce something as polished as what would be a fully polished 8-bit game on this. I mean, I watched Hoffman develop Second the 16-bit game for the Amiga. He put so much effort into that, long time. So to get something fully polished on this, it would take a long time. But the development tools, if they're better, will help that get done. So yeah, I would like if anyone who's watching this knows more about the Jaguar than we do. Well, not hard to know more about than I know, but knows more than Chris does. If you can tell us what the good games are for it, I think Chris would like to know if there's any kind of modern-ish games, and by that it means in the past 20 years, where someone's really done the most they could on the Jaguar, then let them know.
Just to quantify everything I've just said, I actually do love the console. So I'm genuinely hopeful that we'll see some top-notch games emerging again, not just from JagJam, but from other production as well. JagJam is being organised by Boris Kretzinger in conjunction with Somber Productions and also Reese. Reese has all the details in his video, so we'll link to that in the show notes as always. There are some important rules, as Dave's alluded to as well, so do take that into account and do go and see Reese's video for the full details.
But I think you've got 6 months to do it.
Yeah.
So it's a long time to get done. So if this isn't for people who are already experienced in developing games with Jaguar, I would suggest that you need to put an awful lot of time in if you've not developed any games before. Although with 6 months it's possible. But I think if you've developed games before and you've thought, I fancy doing the Jaguar, then this is the opportunity to do it. So this isn't just for someone who's already experienced on it.
If you want some inspiration, funnily enough, there's an awesome video on subreddit shared by Tasted the Murder on JagFest 1999. It's over an hour's worth of footage from the event. And actually, there's some stunning examples of what the Jag is capable of. These are been developed all those years ago. And that's where you can see footage of Skyhammer as well, the one I talked about earlier. So I'll add that link to the show notes as well.
Briefs.
I would like to welcome on our new 4 patrons this week. So we have Paul and Simon, not Paul Simon, but Paul and Simon. And Simon has a lovely Simon Says thing. That's another retro icon. Remember Simon Says?
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Yep.
Yeah, I had the mini one. Yeah.
RoboJohn 2084, very clever name, and Mike. So thank you to Mike, RoboJohn, Simon and Paul for signing up to be twirlers and helping support us. Thank you very much. Where would people go, Chris, if they wanted to help us?
They just need to deposit into my bank account, which is, I'll just bring up the BSB number. Oh, no, that's not right, is it?
No, Chris, no. Where would they go instead?
Patreon.com/thisweekinretro, is it? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Link in the show notes, of course. Thank you very much to them. A few other things happening as well. Senor Bai has said that the Canadian petition for Stop Killing Games is now live. So we've been talking about this a few episodes, a bit of a theme now, the Stop Killing Games campaign, where single-player games are rendered defunct because of online DRM, and multiplayer games where purchases have been made are rendered defunct. I heard a bit of news, and actually got it from Reese's podcast, where the game that this is all about, which is The Crew, apparently only licensed the music for 10 years. Oh. So they only initially intended this to last 10 years. Oh. Meanwhile, years later, towards the end of this 10-year life, they're still selling the game, knowing that they're going to have to pull the plug or pay significantly more to do it. So it's all sounding very cynical now about what they've done. And what's picked up, we covered it, what's picked up by the UK Parliament response, it alludes to a possibility that things have not been done correctly. So the Canadian petition is live. It's already got lots of signatures. Go and sign it. If you're a Canadian, please go and sign it. Save games for the future. Geordie Jedi has posted some suggestions for future guests. I do have some already I want to reach out to, but I encourage you to go there and make your own suggestions for future guests. And the Hall of Fame story from the Strong Museum a few weeks ago, the results are out. And Ultima made it into the Hall of Fame. You'll be delighted about that, Chris, won't you?
Ultima's a game, isn't it?
Yes. Have you played Ultima?
You just want to get your Ultima count up by getting me to say Ultima lots of times. I'm not falling for it.
Along with the original arcade Asteroids game, Myst, the puzzle adventure CD-ROM game, Resident Evil, the the horror survival game that had 1 million sequels, I think. Sim City, of course, the city building sim. I think that's a very good selection this year, although I would echo what we said back at the time we first covered this. Some of these games should have been in the first year. These are such important games, it's taken them a long time to get in. But it doesn't matter, they're in now. On to briefs. From Pajako, hackers have discovered how to reprogram a NES Tetris thing. So I'm guessing this is some kind of buffer overflow type thing where they can hack the game to do extra stuff. I've not had a chance to look into it in detail.
From Soggy Fennell has shared a Guardian article on the top video game magazines. I assume Sinclair User is in there somewhere, an Amiga format. Not sure, not checked the list out myself.
Joint top, Chris, of course. Joint top.
Oh, yeah, of course.
From Marin Bala is a BBC article about people who won't stop using floppies. We've covered this before. I still love floppies, but this is a good article, and it's a BBC article, so it goes into a bit more detail.
Squelch 411 has shared a hardware printer emulator. It plugs into Centronics port and emulates one of several different printers, and you get a PNG file at the end. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so this means you can plug... this means you can emulate a printer, so you're using an old computer, it'll think there's a real printer connected, you can print to it, and without having to get the old printer, endure the noise, and get ribbons, you can still get the printer output, as if you had printed it and then taken a picture.
Did you say endure the noise or enjoy the noise?
It's up to you to decide what I said.
Because if there's noise, I want the noise, and I like
the noise.
And if
it's
a dot matrix, I want those spots. I want to be able to look closely at that PNG and see spots, not just pixels, but spots.
I don't know. Maybe we'll cover it next week in more detail. I don't know. It's all very clever. I never thought we'd need a printer emulator until I heard about it. I thought, why has that not existed until now?
Well, print to PDF. Anyway, moving on.
Well, that's essentially what it is, print to PDF. Right. You don't have print to PDF as an option on your Amstrad CPC, do you?
That's what we need to develop. JagJam, I'm going to develop a print to PDF function for the Jag.
We covered the BBC computer addiction thing from the 80s a couple of months ago. And in the 90s, they've accelerated it here. So there's a video of Gloria Hunniford from the 90s doing moral panic about it, worrying about the children, peril clutching. Don't agree with what was said on this, but if you want to do it, it's the 90s remix of the BBC article we covered before, the BBC video we covered before, the BBC video we covered before wasn't bad. This one is.
And from Lord Borak, there's apparently a quality issue. So the 50th anniversary release Atari 2600 games that cost $1,000 to collect. Apparently 2 of the 10 cartridges don't actually work. I must say I was actually tempted to collect those myself. So that's quite an interesting one.
Yeah, this is people who have bought the sealed thing and kept it sealed apart, mostly kept it sealed, would never find out, but someone's actually opened it up and found out a couple of the games don't work. Mounted backwards or something. So it's a bit of a shame that, especially for that cost.
Yeah.
There are loads more stories in the subreddit. The subreddit is getting healthier and healthier with lots of people submitting stories. If you want to kill some time, go and look at the subreddit, browse through what's there, hit the buttons to let us know what to cover next week, and also submit your own stuff to it. Do you have home assistant devices like a Google Home or an Amazon Echo, Chris?
None. They're all evil spy machines, and they're out to change my shopping list when I'm not looking. Don't trust them.
They kind of are there to change your shopping list. That was the whole point of they thought they would get money from people buying things from them. It's not worked out, I don't think. I do have several. I can't say I make a lot of use of them. I'll ask if it's going to rain later on. I'll ask what time it is. If I'm got my hands full, I don't want to look at a watch or something. I ask when the football's on or what the score was. And of course, I use them as a Bluetooth speaker for my phone. They feel that they should do more for me, and I'm not making the full use of them. But they're happy to plug into the wall and waste power, and I'm happy enough to use them to turn the lights on or off by voice. They actually came out 10 years ago. So they're not retro, of course, but 10 years is a long time ago they came out. I remember them being a big deal and everyone was buying them. They were expensive, lots of talk about it, but they don't feel that way now. They're not making the same money they were supposed to. As I mentioned before, there was hope that people would use it to buy things and then they would make some money from that, but it's not happening. They're not making the money we're supposed to. The spending on them has been winding down. They're not expensive to buy. You can go on eBay and get them cheap for used. And I know if you took mine away, it wouldn't be the end of the world for me. I'd cope without them. But it wasn't always this way. We've mentioned British TV magician Paul Daniels being an 80s enthusiast of home computing, and I've seen videos of them with his BBC Micro trying home automation. But who knew that in 1983 there was a smart speaker, although I don't think it was a speaker, but a smart speaker, you couldn't connect your mobile phone to it, but a smart speaker type AI device that was already existing. And thanks to Dizzy Heights, we do. He submitted a video from Popular Science that shows us Butler in a box. Now, the first thing like this I saw was, of course, HAL 9000. And it's not exactly the most warm and fuzzy, encouraging AI that you'd want to see and hear. So it makes me wonder if these things are such a disappointment because they're bad. Are these devices that we have in our home bad? Or if it's simply because when we're in the 80s anticipating this stuff in the future, it's just simply nicer to anticipate things than it is to live in the reality. I could sit here and criticise the modern world for all the rubbish going on. If we look back to the programmes we used to get in the television in the UK, it was Tomorrow's World, which will talk about all the amazing things that are coming. And I could sit and criticise that, but we probably don't appreciate enough the stuff we did get and we take for granted, like holding our entire music library in our hand. Or in fact, the internet in our hand. Huge big TVs, the car technology we have, the internet itself, the new Dublin to New York portal. Have you seen that, Chris?
No, I haven't seen that.
It's a portal in the street. It's like a Stargate style portal.
Oh yeah, that. No, yeah. And you see people at the other end. Yeah.
And if you're in Dublin, you can see New York, or in New York, you can see Dublin Wave and so on. It's really just a Zoom call. But it is kind of cool. And in fact, Zoom calls themselves, I remember going to Spain on a holiday and we'd all gather around the payphone for a 1-minute phone call to say, we've arrived, everything's nice, it's very hot here. And you'd be chucking peseta coins into this phone box while you were phoning home. It was amazing being able to contact back home. These days, you step off the plane, you can Zoom someone and you can just speak to them on your phone, see them on the phone, and there's nothing to it. I can talk to someone who is lying by the pool in Spain on holiday, and there's nothing remarkable seeming about it. So we do take things for granted. But when we talk back to this device here, it did a lot of things that would have been cool at the time, but not a lot of things that would be cool now. And I don't think it was a cost-effective, compelling sell. I think anyone who bought it saw it as a cool gadget thing, and I think that maybe explains why we don't think they're cool now. They're no longer impressing us. I think the reason for the smart speaker thing to impress us in the first place was, look what this can do, it's amazing, rather than this will make your life easier. So maybe that's why they're not impressing us now. What do you think, Chris?
When I first saw it, because this was 1983, was that right? Did I get that right? Yeah.
1983.
And when you look at it, you know, you've got things like Alexa and Google Home and stuff like that. And instantly it does bring back that kind of feeling of this was an extremely early attempt at that. That's impressive. Yeah. It makes me, when you watch the video, I just want to go off and watch Demon Seed, which was apparently part of the inspiration for Butler in a Box. So you have to watch the video to understand how that fits in. Basically, it's a 1977 sci-fi horror film with an AI controlling the home, and obviously everything's going to go wrong because it's a horror movie, right? Sounds like my kind of movie. So now that's a nice way to find out about another horror movie that I haven't seen. So yeah, Demon Seed, inspiration for Butler in a Box. But it's weird, you know. Oddly, I find the modern AI and home devices intrusive. and a bit creepy. And I'm not scared of technology. You know, I'm not resisting technology, but that's just how I perceive those things. But in the 80s and 90s, I'd have found this as cool as heck. A device like this that you could just talk to and turn on a light or turn on the kettle or whatever. And perhaps it's because back then they weren't connected to the web. You know, they were self-contained, and so I think they probably felt a bit safer. And in fact, what it makes me think is I'd actually happily use Butler in a box if it worked better than is portrayed in the video. You have to watch it for yourselves. Looks a bit interesting, but you know. Maybe there's a market, right, for people like me to release a self-contained, you know, home device, AI device that isn't connected to the World Wide Web, doesn't have to upload all of your conversations to the cloud and change your shopping list, but is simply connected via your internal home Wi-Fi, but it just does the job you want it to do, which is assist you around the home. I'd be a lot more comfortable with that. And if somebody made that with an 80s aesthetic, with a poorly modulated speech synthesized sound behind it, similar to this device, I would be all over that. With a little LED readout, nothing more, no fancy screen, no touch screen, just a black monolith with a LED readout and a really poor black.
Red.
I would
red LEDs or
red LEDs. Oh no, these were green, I think, weren't they? Or on this particular one, but whatever.
I'm thinking Knight Rider.
Red. Oh yeah, actually that would be nice. But yeah, so the box has to be black. LEDs, green or red. I'd be behind either. Poor sounding speech synthesis. I'd buy that. I'd buy that in a heartbeat. What about yourself?
I'm sorry, Chris. I'm afraid I can't do that. I would prefer if my devices didn't have to go to the internet and back. I think they kind of do to do the voice recognition, or at least that's how it seems to be. I'm noticing that with some smart devices that I have quite a few smart devices, with some of them, it can take 6-7 seconds sometimes for it to work, and it's a little bit frustrating, and that's because it's going to the internet. Mine is Smart Things by Samsung, which is really just something called Zigbee, and Zigbee is the protocol it uses. And lots of things say they work with Smart Things, but what they mean is they've got an internet bridge to it, right, which means that it goes online and it works. So I say to something, and it goes to the internet, it talks to Smart Things, which then talks to my device in the house. And I've noticed I need to be careful when I'm buying things like switches and light bulbs, because they need to work natively. Otherwise, it has to go to the internet and back, and it's slow. So I have to get things that actual proper Zigbee rather than native stuff. Smart technology seems to have entered into a bit of a lull, just like it did after this Butler device came out. So this Butler device came out, and then things didn't really move for a long time. You had a bit of it going on. Things didn't move for a long time. And then, of course, 10 years ago, it all took off again. But it seems as if they've entered into another lull now, where the stuff that we have is fine, but there's nothing really changing there. So I wonder if there'll be another big development coming. I don't know what it'll be, but I wonder if AI perhaps will do it. I don't know. AI seems to be getting pushed at us from all different directions now. Whether there'll be an AI thing or not, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, though, that I think I'd need to be heavily inspired. I think I need to see something that inspired me the same way that it would do on Tomorrow's World in the 80s, or it would do if I saw smart speakers come out for the first time 10 years ago for things to change. So I don't know. Maybe it'll catch on again, but certainly this thing is much more cool than it is useful. I don't think anyone bought this for the utility. I think they bought it just for the cool factor of it. And I think maybe that's why smart speakers, we bought them because they were cool, and the utility isn't quite there.
So last week's question of the week was, what game would make you the saddest if you could never play it again? Dave, do you want to read out the top answer?
Game Boy Tetris. So this is from Stewpot Seb. On holiday in Mallorca with my parents, and 2 days in, my mum got hit by a huge wave in the sea and lost her false teeth. Said she's lost all her teeth in an accident years before. We thought that they were gone after hours of searching. I was standing in the shallow waters when I suddenly felt something sharp under my feet. I found the teeth. My prize? A Game Boy that had just come out at the time. I played Tetris for the rest of the holiday and loved it so much. Still love the game today, and the nostalgia of that holiday it still gives me. What an amazing story, False Teeth in the Sea.
I just love, this is what it's all about for me, that it's not about the game, it's about the memory linked to getting the game. I love that stuff. I absolutely love it.
The context of it, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. The next one, Tungsten Orchid, Lemmings. It's the one game I could play with my mum and my sisters. Every now and then they ask me if it could be played on modern computers, and I tell them it can be run on an emulator such as DOSBox. Unfortunately, they aren't confident in setting that up, and I don't live nearby them anymore, so I can't help. Oh, somebody pop round to his sisters and his mums and install Lemmings for them. That'd be fantastic.
Look at how Tungsten Orchid has signed off the message.
What is that?
It's an ASCII art cat.
Oh, so it is.
Its tail and the body and the head. It's good, isn't it? Fiskett does say that Lemmings for Windows still works in Windows 10. I wonder if there's an archive org link that will take you to a pre-built emulator. Just click on the link, it'll take you to it. I don't know. There must be a way to play it. Mike that listens, Mike Daly, the father of Lemmings, maybe he'll have a suggestion on how to play it. But yeah, Lemmings is great. Jeff Mendoza says, Outrun 2. It's the one game I can relate to because it is disappearing. I think the Ferrari license expired, so it isn't getting continually re-released. I have it in digital format on the Xbox 360, but I'm relying on a spinning disc hard drive to stay alive there. It's too new for Mister to run it. There is a PC version, but it doesn't play that nice with Windows 10. So it's one of those examples of the digital download era. The digital download era that can largely disappear, at least because it's difficult to own indefinitely. And yeah, that's a big thing. They license in the game for a short period of time because they know that eventually they won't have any reason to continue that license because it won't be earning money. So that's a bit cynical of them.
That is a fantastic game as well. I absolutely love that game.
Lots of other ones.
I had the DLC version for PS3, and so I don't have any way to play it either. Nuclear Silo for sale. What does he say? Where's the actual game?
Donkey Kong Country 2.
Oh, where is it? It's buried down. Oh, yeah, there we go. Final answer in bold. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got The Settlers, Flashback, Quest for Identity, Super Bomberman, Day of the Tentacle, GTA 3, Dizzy, Civilization 2, Earthbound, Jet Strike CD32, Survivors, and someone asking, is Minecraft retro, Dave? Well, I don't think we specified a retro game, did we? So that's fine to submit that one. What would be yours, Chris? What would be yours?
Oh, that's such a... On the spot, I can't actually answer that question.
For me, I think it would be Dungeon Master because it's such a good game. So many RPGs end up with too much combat and grinding, and you end up slogging through it, whereas Dungeon Master... It's not that long a game, and you go through lots of changes. Yeah, Dungeon Master, I think, is one of the best games. Or maybe it's X-Wing and TIE Fighter.
Maybe.
I couldn't choose between...
Original Outrun. Now that you've talked about dungeon crawlers, I mean, Captive, I've been getting back into that again because I've had time. Oh, it'd be horrible to not be able to play that again. But it's also horrible to go back to because it's freaking hard work.
What if we take Doom away from you?
Oh, actually, you've hit the nail on the head there. Yeah.
Doom?
Yeah, well done.
Yeah,
that would be a game changer, literally. Yeah.
So what about next week then? We have a question for next week for the listeners and viewers. We talked about recording ZX Spectrum data from the radio, but let's put the radio to one side, unless that's how you did it. What's the most interesting way that you've managed to get data to your computer? So any step along the way that you've done is a bit more interesting than just downloading it or taking it out of the box. Any step there, what's the most interesting way that you've managed to get data onto your computer? Chris, thank you so very much for coming back. I'm sure it won't be the last time. It was getting to the point where I felt it was a good idea to invite you back on. And of course, this happened. So perhaps we'll just leave it until one of us can't make it and get you back on that way, unless it's been too long. It's great to speak to you again. Our listeners have been asking for it as well. So you're certainly popular. It's very sad that you're no longer with us that way. Yeah. I'm sure you'll be back in a few months' time. But thank you for listening this week. We will see you next week at the same bat place and the same bat time.
Bye.
I'm waving. Chris is waving.
I'm waving.
Neil's not waving because Neil didn't show up for work today.
He might still be waving.
Phoned in sick.
We just can't.
He could be waving.
Yeah.
Neil, if you're watching this, wave to us.
Who else is waving? Let us know.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This Week in Retro was presented by Chris from 005 Agema and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/This Week in Retro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.